Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Bible study. We're in the Harmony of the Gospel series, and we'll be in Mark chapter 4 and then Luke chapter 8. We're going to witness as Jesus stills the storm here. Uh, and this is also in Matthew chapter 8, but we'll just read Mark 4 and Luke 8 here. Mark chapter 4, starting verse 34, says, He did not say anything to them about without using a parable, but when he was alone with his own disciples, he explained everything. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to the disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Now we go to Luke chapter 8, and it says much the same thing. It says, One day Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side of the lake." So they got into the boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake, so that the boat was was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided, and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked the disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." Tired from a hard day of preaching and teaching, Jesus sought rest from, the multitudes of people by getting in a boat and going with his disciples to a more sparsely settled area on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. He entered the boat, no doubt fully aware of what was getting ready to happen. Jesus probably, but he went to sleep nonetheless. Jesus probably rolled up the cushion, some sort of cushion or seat in the boat or something, and used it for a pillow as he laid down to rest here. But while he was sleeping, a fierce storm came up and struck the area, seemingly out of nowhere. And notice the contrast between the behavior of Jesus and the disciples in the midst of this storm. He was fast asleep. They were scared to death. They were so frightened that they had to wake Jesus up from his nap. They said, essentially, "Don't you even care if we drown?" Uh, now we wonder why these men were so afraid of this storm. I mean, had they not been in this situation before, or at least some of them, this body of water is, of course, called the Sea of Galilee. Not really a sea, for it's a freshwater lake. It's about 13 miles long, 8 miles wide. Pretty good sized lake, needless to say. But at least four of his disciples here were used to this lake. They made their living as commercial fishermen on this lake. Peter and Andrew, as well as James and John, uh, they must have known just about everything about this lake, about navigating it. They'd been doing it for years, apparently. And how could such seasoned fishermen kind of be caught in such a storm on the open water? How could this have happened to these very experienced, very seasoned commercial fishermen? Well, the unique topography of this lake pretty much provides us with an answer here. The Lake of Galilee sits nearly 700 feet below sea level. It's in a big, deep depression, needless to say, and it's surrounded on three sides by steep cliffs, high mountains, some of them as high as like 2,700 feet, I read. cool winds often rush down from the steep slopes and mix with the warmer air that's rising from the surface of the water. And what happens when this occurs? Well, the resulting turbulence creates violent storms that strike quickly and without warning. They're sudden and can be quite devastating. So now we have Jesus and his disciples in this boat being tossed around by the wind and the waves caused by this storm. While the disciples panic, Jesus seems pretty much unconcerned about this wind and waves. I mean, he keeps napping. No doubt he knows what's going on, but he was getting some rest, and they had to go and wake him up, right? I hate when that happens. But Jesus gets up and does something that I don't know the disciples were quite expecting this, even though they got him up and they knew that they'd witnessed his power before. But it caused them to wonder about their teacher, their rabbi, and his great powers to perform miracles. He essentially just spoke to the storm, the wind and the waves, and they listened. Jesus did not regard the wind and the waves as some sort of evil spirits, but he saw this storm as sort of I guess as an act from Satan himself. And in rebuking them, he condemned the ministers of Satan who were making use of this storm. The powers of evil were at work, I guess, attempting to swamp the boat here. Just maybe this was another one of the devil's attempts to get rid of this Jesus, the Messiah of God. Satan was certainly afraid of him, so why not try everything that he can do to stop him? But Jesus spoke to the wind and the waves as if they were people, to emphasize his authority here. He wanted to reveal his complete power and authority over the natural world, the earth itself, all creation. This storm, listen, it immediately calmed down. And this calm revealed the perfection of the miracle here. There was no remnant of the storm left behind. It was immediate. It was complete. The waves of the lake in such a storm would normally continue to roll long after the winds died down, but not in this case. Immediately, everything calmed down. Then Jesus turns to the disciples and he addresses them and their lack of faith in this situation. They had witnessed some great and powerful miracles at the hands of Jesus, and yet here they kind of doubted him, if you will. While he had everything under control, obviously, they were in fear. So doubt breeds fear. Their lives would not be taken as long as Jesus with him, but they didn't know that. They feared the storm. On the one hand, the disciples had little faith, or they would not have been afraid of that storm. They wouldn't have been upset about what was happening. They would have realized Jesus was with them and everything would be okay. On the other hand, at least they had enough faith to go to Jesus in their time of need, right? When all else fails, some people turn to Jesus, but he should be our number one person that we turn to in such times. It was beginning to dawn upon these disciples, I believe, that the ordinary categories of their human experience were not adequate to describe the power and authority of Jesus Christ. They were often found speechless when it came to what he did, his healings, his miracles, his wonders and signs that he performed all along the way in his ministry here on earth. one of his disciples, would later sit down to write his own testimony about the power and life and times of Jesus Christ. And he would begin his gospel in this manner: In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. Now remember, at this point, John had witnessed, let's say, the rest of the story of Jesus, including the resurrection and the ascension. He had received the Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost to empower him and direct him in his evangelistic efforts. John had had some time, decades in fact, to let it all sink in, to think about the time he spent with Jesus. As he replayed the many miracles, the wonders, signs that he had witnessed at the hands of Jesus, he used these words to try and describe the power of the Word, the living Word, Jesus Christ. Now let me ask you a question today. What kind of storm are you facing today? Or what kind of storms has God allowed you or empowered you to get through in the past? While the disciples here face a physical storm, our storms come in various forms. Take a moment to think about the proverbial storms in your life, those situations that cause you the greatest anxiety and, lest we say, even fear. We all face such situations in our lives at one time or another. It might be a bill that we don't know how we're going to pay, or a health scare for you or one of your loved ones, either one, and could be an uncertainty at work, or even the loss of a job. It could even be a literal storm. Some people are scared to death of storms, aren't they? My grandmother was one of those people. When storms would come at night, she would get everyone in the house up just to tell them that there was a storm. There was little that we could do, nothing we could do, in fact, to do about the situation, yet she felt it necessary to get us up and make us all aware that, well, it was storming. Well, whatever your storm, your difficulty, you have two options. You can worry and assume that, well, the Lord just doesn't care, or you can resist fear, putting your trust in Him. When you feel like panicking, confess your need for God and then trust in Him to care for you. By all means, do what you can do in the situation, but then rely upon Him to bring you through whatever situation that you're facing at the time. The disciples lived with Jesus for about 3 years, and yet they continually underestimated Him and His power. They did not see that His authority was limitless, at least until after the resurrection. Then they understood it more fully. May we never underestimate Jesus in our life, especially as we face the different crises in our lives. May we face all the storms, physical, spiritual, emotional, knowing that we have the all-powerful Son of God on our side. He is in our boat, and He's ready to help us in our times of need. I've always heard that we should feed our faith so that our fears will starve to death. How true that really is, and how that shines through in our story from the Gospels today. I pray this lesson has been a blessing to you. May God bless you and keep you, give you peace until we can meet here again and study the Word of God.